Have you ever felt like you're doing everything right, listening to the episodes, practicing the tools, and still wondering, why isn't this working yet? Or do you catch yourself rushing ahead, thinking about the next step, instead of absorbing where you are right now? Welcome back to Quieting Anxiety. I'm Dr. Monica Frank with Excel at Life. By now you've learned a lot about cognitive behavioral therapy for anxiety, what it is, and how it helps. But in today's episode, we're stepping back to focus on something just as important: how to stay with the process. Because even when you know what to do, it's easy to get discouraged when change feels slow. This episode is about reinforcing the steps you've learned, understanding what real progress looks like, and practicing patience along the way. Let's begin with a short focus exercise to help settle in. Take a slow, steady breath in and gently exhale. Let your shoulders drop. Unclench your jaw. Feel the support beneath you. This moment is not a demand. It's not something you have to pass or fail. It's simply a place to be, to breathe, to rest in the process of becoming. Not perfect, not finished, just here. As we go through today's episode, carry this awareness with you. Growth doesn't happen all at once. It unfolds gradually, and it begins right here, not somewhere in the future, but in this moment of quiet attention. Many times, new clients have told me they saw a cognitive behavioral therapist in the past, and it didn't help. When I ask them to describe the therapy, they usually say it involved a lot of talking. And while talking can be helpful, cognitive behavioral therapy, true CBT, involves structured work. It involves practice, assignments, learning, repetition, and action. If a therapist isn't providing those tools and guidance, they aren't really using CBT. CBT should also have a strong educational component. Now, there are times where most of the work needs to take place with the direct assistance of the therapist, such as when there is a severe primary diagnosis such as bipolar disorder or schizophrenia, in addition to the anxiety disorder. Also, when the more intense interventions are being used. In those circumstances, I've worked frequently with someone or in a day treatment program. That's why in this podcast series, I give you structured steps and evidence-based tools. And if you're using the Quieting Anxiety app or the Excel at Life website, you'll find companion audios, tests, and written tools to support your learning. But even with all these resources, it's important to know how to use them well. So to use these podcasts most effectively, keep in mind the following. Each episode builds on the last. Even if a topic doesn't seem immediately relevant, it may offer insight that connects later. Think of this series as training to become an expert on yourself. And when an episode really speaks to your situation, don't just listen once. Come back to it. Sometimes we hear things differently the second or third time. Repetition is how we build new habits. Sometimes it's even helpful to go back to previous episodes after you've learned new material. and have practiced new skills. In fact, repetition is one of the most important elements in CBT. Old thinking patterns don't just disappear. To override them, the new patterns have to become stronger. My karate instructor used to say, you have to practice a move thousands of times to make it automatic. CBT is no different. That's why the guided audios, especially the ones marked as companion audios, are meant to be used again and again to help internalize new ways of thinking. I can't emphasize enough how important repetition is to this process. Not just hearing something once and moving on, but truly letting it sink in. When you listen to a companion audio over and over, you're not just learning a concept intellectually, you're training your brain to respond differently. Think of it like walking a new trail through the woods. The first time through, you're stepping over brush, pushing branches aside. But the more often you take that path, the clearer it becomes, until eventually it feels like the natural path. That's what we're doing here. Each time you practice a new way of thinking or responding, especially in a relaxed, focused state, you make that response stronger. And that matters, especially when you're anxious, because when anxiety kicks in, it's harder to think clearly. But if you've been practicing regularly, those more helpful responses are already familiar. They're more accessible. You don't have to try to remember the right thing to do. Your brain starts to offer it up more automatically. That's also why I include mindfulness and visualization in the companion audios. When you hear the same calming phrases or engage in the same mental imagery over time, you start to associate those practices with a sense of ease. It's like creating an emotional reset button, not by forcing yourself to feel calm, but by allowing your body and mind to remember what calm feels like. And eventually those tools become part of you, not something outside of you that you have to reach for, but something you carry with you. The repetition isn't just reinforcing information. It's helping reshape your relationship with your thoughts, your body, and your experience of anxiety. So when I say listen more than once, I'm not asking you to memorize the words. I'm inviting you to let them become familiar, so familiar that they start to echo in your daily life. Not because you're trying hard, but because you've made space for change to happen. It's also important to make relaxation and mindfulness part of your daily life, not just something you do when you're feeling overwhelmed. These practices can become your foundation, resetting your nervous system and giving you a calmer place to begin the work of change. But as you continue along this path, it's just as important to stay aware of some common detours, ways you can unintentionally block your own progress. Understanding these pitfalls can help you avoid unnecessary frustration and stay focused on what really works. One common trap to be aware of is turning CBT itself into a demand. Some people get caught up in doing it right, or feel like they need to rush through everything to get to the end. But CBT isn't about arriving. It's about building a more flexible, compassionate way of responding to your life. Sometimes as people learn CBT, they start believing that if rationality is good, then they should be completely rational all the time. But that belief is irrational in itself. It's a perfectionistic demand. And CBT is about realistic expectations, not perfection. Life is messy. You won't always respond ideally, and that's okay. CBT also isn't about forcing yourself to think positively. It's not about putting on a happy face or denying real problems. It's about seeing things clearly, questioning assumptions, and choosing responses that are balanced and helpful. At the same time, CBT can sometimes be misused as an excuse to avoid change. I've seen people latch on to the idea of self acceptance and twist it into justification. This is just who I am. Others should accept me and my anxiety. CBT teaches you to accept yourself so you can grow, not to give yourself permission to stay stuck. But sometimes people may latch on to part of a CBT idea and overlook the rest. For instance, someone might say, I have the right to set boundaries with my time. I don't have to say yes to everything. And that's true and generally healthy. But CBT also asks you to consider why you're making that choice. Are you protecting your well being, or are you avoiding discomfort, like disappointing others or facing conflict? What feels rational on the surface might still be driven by anxiety underneath. That's why CBT isn't just about what you believe, it's about how those beliefs shape your behavior and whether they help you move forward. Mindfulness is another area where people sometimes go off course. If you try too hard to be mindful, it can actually backfire. I learned this myself in college during a retreat where we were supposed to let music inspire imagery. I became so focused on trying to have an image that I couldn't relax enough for anything to come. Only when I gave up and let go did the imagery finally come. That experience taught me something important. You can't force mindfulness. You have to allow it. So if you ever feel frustrated, like CBT isn't working fast enough, or like you should be farther along, take a step back. Breathe. Remember, this is a process. It takes time, effort, and most of all, patience. Everything we've done so far has been about building your foundation, learning to recognize thinking patterns, understand how anxiety works, and begin developing the tools to respond more effectively. These steps may seem simple at first, but they're essential. You've been strengthening your awareness, shifting how you relate to your thoughts, and practicing a new kind of patience with yourself. That's not just preparation, it's progress. The next episodes will start to focus more specifically on the tools of change. In the next episode, we'll begin working with the cognitive diary, which is where we start applying these skills in a more structured and targeted way. This is the heart of cognitive therapy, where change becomes more active and more specific. It's not harder necessarily, but it does take a bit more focus and effort. And because you've built this solid foundation, you'll be ready for it. So today, take a moment to reflect on anything you might want to revisit or spend a little more time with before moving on. This isn't about getting it perfect. It's about making sure you feel confident in what you've learned so far. And if you find yourself impatient or uncertain, the companion audio, Trusting the Process of Change, can help you stay grounded and focused on where you are right now, because that's where real change begins. Let's finish with a closing moment of reflection. Take a slow breath in and exhale gently. Let your shoulders soften. Let your thoughts settle. Now say to yourself, I'm here. I'm learning. I don't need to rush. You don't have to have everything figured out today. You don't have to get it all right. You just need to focus on what you're learning today. You're not trying to be perfect. You're learning to be present, realistic, and resilient. And that steady, intentional practice is what creates lasting change. Until next time, keep practicing, keep breathing, and keep moving forward.